So I think the first band that I discovered within Christian music that just was a super exciting discovery, where it was like, it just connected with me right away, it was the Choir. And honestly, it would mystify me when I would share them with people who responded with kind of a shrug, or that's okay. In retrospect, of course, many of those people were listening to Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, considering them the height of Christian music. So in 1985, Derry Dougherty, Steve Hindalong, and Michael Sauerbrey released their first disc under the name Youth Choir. Voices in Shadows was actually a rather ambitious first release. They weren't singing happy songs with bold spiritual depictions of happy spirituality. They were starting at a point where most bands have to work to get to. Now, this is not to say they were writing totally vague songs of uncertain meaning. Another World sang of longing for heaven. Wounds of a Young Heart was all about the trials of youth and the healing of Christ. Someone's Calling was a reference to the verse in which Jesus says he stands and knocks at the door to our hearts. The band even entered praise territory with Anyone But You. And A Million Years.
Looking forward to the time when I leave this world behind and eternity begins. A resting place inside your arms.
But really, the two standout tracks were the Lamentations' Dreams and Why Are All the Children Crying? Both expressed heartfelt feelings of hurting and discomfort, one focused inward.
If only I could turn back time to my dreams of yesterday. If only I could stay a child and trust in you that way. All my dreams are falling down.
Dreams was about the desperation of faith failing to feel all that comforting when it seems like your world is in collapse. Like your hopes are just never going to come true. Now, Why Are All the Children Crying was very focused outward. It was about trying to understand why there's suffering in the world.
On a rainy night in LA, a little baby cries. Its mother stares in horror and watches her son die. In a far-off land across the sea, 1,000 children children cry. Empty stomachs filled with pain. 1,000 children die.
How, you know, the age-old question of how can a loving God let so much evil happen in the world? And that's, you know, that was kind of a heavy topic to even be talking about in that fashion in 1985. Now, the music is very keyboard heavy and it feels very dated, which you've probably realized as you've been hearing these songs. Listening to Voices and Shadows is kind of more like a trip in time rather than a timeless selection of songs. Honestly, it would be kind of interesting to see the band re-record some of these songs now. They followed it up with the indie EP Shades of Grey. They were preparing to tour with the artist Steve Taylor, so they produced the 5-song set. This album marks a couple of things. First, although Steve Hindalong was listed as the drummer on Voices and Shadows, the drums were really all from drum machines. Whereas on the EP, Steve was playing drums. It's a less keyboard-driven album, really. And it also marked the first time that Tim Chandler played bass for the band, and it will not be his last. And of course, Dan Michaels joined, providing sax and an instrument called the Lyricon. While the band had not intended to release the EP as an actual official release, they were trying to get out of the record deal that they were in at the time, and allowing the label to release this made that possible. Probably the most memorable songs on the album are Fade Into You, and All Night Long, which are praise tunes.
I've been hoping to see you all night long. I've been praying for the morning. I've been looking out my window all night long.
And then the song 15 Doors. So the band got signed to Myrrh Records, which was kind of unexpected. I mean, they weren't the typical Myrrh type band. And that relationship actually ended up lasting for quite a bit of time, starting with the release of Diamonds and Rain in 1986. This was produced by the artist Charlie Peacock, and it was the first album to show their new shortened name, just The Choir. And frankly, it really is the first Choir CD. Derry, Steve, Tim, and Dan are all performing on it for one thing, and there's no drum machines and limited keyboards. Musically, with the guidance of Peacock, the band was actually coming into their own, and he contributed the gentle pop of Kingston Road. But really what stands out are the poetic lyrics. They have a song called You Do That Triangle, which is about alcoholism, and it uses the metaphor of, you know, a triangle as the ongoing cycle of being an alcoholic.
In my
I Painted Mercy uses the imagery of painting as descriptive of the act of the death and resurrection of Christ.
When I chose this color to paint the winter sky, I wanted to inspire you. It hurts me when you cry. Perhaps you didn't notice the lantern in the tree. I tried to show you heaven. It isn't hard to see.
The standout songs, in my opinion, are Love Falls Down and Render Love. Render Love speaks of love as an action, something you do to people, and it wistfully notes that
ashes what fools reap, war what they sow. What does a man gain who loses his soul?
another winner and the big radio hit for the band would be Fear Only You. Part praise song, part social commentary, Derry almost becomes guttural in his delivery of the chorus. This song is truly the hardest the choir rocked in their early work. The album cover seems to indicate that the label was more interested in just promoting Derry and Steve as the choir. Maybe they felt Dan and Tim looked too average Joe, no tall ladies hair. That motif continued in 1988's Chase the Kangaroo, which featured blurry images of Steve and Derry. But that's not what makes the disc stand out. Really, in a way, this is the choir's rebirth. The first releases were just the practice runs. Chase the Kangaroo is a swirling, dreamy, guitar-driven album. They're penning deeply personal lyrics, and the band took bold risks in what they were doing. Hindalong wrote about the struggles he and his wife had with a miscarriage in the song Sad Face.
There's a woman in my kitchen, the rainbow on her cheek. Well, isn't that a promise? Still, I never felt so weak. There's a tiny spirit in a world above, cradled so sweetly in our Father's love. So you don't have to cry. No, there's something in my eye.
Sorrow is better than laughter, for a sad face is good for the heart, wrote Solomon.
A sad face is good for the heart. Don't cry, it can be a cruel world. A sad face is good for the heart of a girl. A sad face.
And it is a freeing concept, one rarely mentioned in Christian music. Christian music was all about convincing you to become a Christian, or if you were already a Christian, encouraging you to feel good about it. The lyrics that most bands were doing promised you how good you'd feel if you just held fast. But sharing each other's sorrows, not so much. But Sad Face, a beautiful song, really punctuates the feel of the album. The Rifleman uses the old TV series to address the troubled dichotomy of many.
Whatever happened to the rifleman? I've got a job for the rifleman. The rifleman, he really knew how to settle the score. Mercy knocks on the devil's door. When I pray for peace and a revel in war, I always
When I prayed for peace but reveled in war. The spoken word delivery for the verses brings a very weary feel, much like the revisionist westerns, such as Unforgiven. So Far Away is really the first of a few songs expressing the heartache of being on tour, far from your family. And the song paints an image of a husband and wife communicating more by notes and passing questions than having time to just sit and talk.
I'm lost by day and working all night. I saw your note about the pilot light. Didn't I fix that thing before? An extra blanket will have to do. You know I can't come home to you. Shut the windows tight, lock the door. I've seen that sky before, and I
Consider is probably the most evangelistic song on the CD. It's from the perspective of Christ asking the listener to consider his love.
consider your laughter, consider my tears, consider my love, consider your fear.
The song has a very driving rhythm, full of energy that can both be mellow and aggressive at the same time. There's much to admire in this CD. It's full of atmosphere and mood, and it still holds up. It's a record that can seem dark with hope. Sometimes it can be feeling as if it's mired in the human condition. But that was about to change. They say that having kids changes your perspective on life, and this is why I've avoided having any. Okay, I kid, that's not why. But it was clearly true for Steve Hindalong. The 1989 CD Wide-Eyed Wonder is an upbeat, hope-filled piece of pie. Hindalong and his wife had their first child, a daughter, and the entire album seems cheerier and more excitable. It kicks off with the rock number Someone to Hold On To, a declaration of a need for something or someone bigger than oneself to really keep a grip on life. Someone higher than the moon.
Los Angeles. Woke up one morning, shaking so hard. I need someone to hold on to, someone higher than the stars. I need someone to hide under, should the sky fall on my car. I need someone to hold on to.
And then there's the wonderful ballad Wide-Eyed Wonder.
Wide-eyed wonder girl, staring into the sky, I'm wondering why. It's a good, great world, but it turns around, never mind the ground.
It expresses the love, hopes, and dreams Hindalong held for his newly born daughter.
Please don't cry, Father's love.
Really, with Wide-Eyed Wonder, there started a trend of songs dedicated to family, and it also marked a change in the band's lineup. Bassist Tim Chandler had left the band due to other obligations. He was a very in-demand bassist. And his replacement was Robin Spurs. At the time in Christian music, if you had a lady in the band, she was probably your lead vocalist, or she played the tambourine. Or both. But Robin was not the lead vocalist. She was the bassist. Robin seemed to fit in with the band pretty well, and to the point that Hindalong and Dougherty developed a song all around her talking about some crazy dream she had had.
A blue light shining on my face. She thought she saw me smile. Eyes aglow, blinking all the while.
And they gave the song a very ambiguous title, Robin Had a Dream. The band still gets experimental. They have songs like Happy Fool, Car, etc.
It's not a bad car that I drive. Barely well, but still alive. You might laugh when I arrive.
It really is. It's a good album. It's an interesting follow-up that's a bit different. It's probably the closest at that time of blending the pop sensibilities and Chase the Kangaroo. But 1 year later, the band produced probably what was, at the time at least, it was kind of their magnum opus. Circle Slide was pure, dreamy, alternative art. The album was kind of expected to be the one to cross over even. Now, part of this was due to the fact that Epic Records was releasing the CD to the mainstream market. It was not a successful bid in spite of how good the album was. Now, unlike Wide-Eyed Wonder, which was more up in tempo, Circle Slide was remarkably mellow. The opening epic track is 7 minutes long, using a children's slide as a heavenly metaphor.
Come on, let's ride the circle slide. Come on, let's ride the circle slide.
The album had even more complex lyrics than before, and the album also asked questions with no real answer, such as in About Love. Circle Slide had even more complex lyrics than before, and the album asked questions that didn't necessarily have any answers, such as in About Love, where Derry sings,
Was I meant to be yours, the will of Christ above? Do you believe true love is blind? 'Cause I don't know. When I get home come spring, won't you be glad to be mine? Just don't laugh, please don't cry. Just say so.
and About Love is really a strangely dark and yet entirely romantic song, and at one point declaring,
There's something dark about destiny. There's something blue about you with me. There's something wonderful about love.
But I would say that my favorite track on the entire disc is the final track, The Haunted Restore My Soul. It's a dark and beautiful take on brokenness that really is the perfect way to close out that CD.
I call to you with one lung exploded from breathing the dust of the earth. With my tongue you wrote it from licking the crust of the earth. A tear away from reconcile, a prayer away from home. You restore my soul.
Now, on this album, the lineup had changed again. Robin stepped out of the band, and original bassist Michael Sauerbrey stepped back in. Michael only played on one track, as Robin actually had stepped out due to creative differences midway through the recording process. Now, this rift was not permanent, as Robin joined Derry, Steve, and Dan in 2017 to tour for Wide-Eyed Wonder, in which they played the entire album live. It was phenomenal. Now, this album is as easily important as Chase the Kangaroo, and honestly, it's a must if you're going to start taking an interest in the choir. It's a wonderful album. The band took a hiatus when Word Records gave Derry and Steve their own record label, which they christened Glasshouse Records. They used it to showcase work from Rick Alba, who was the bassist formerly of the Altar Boys, and the Throws. They also produced the At the Foot of the Cross Worship series, which was 2 albums. Interestingly, and I suspect consciously, the band never used Glasshouse to release a single choir CD. In 1993, the band put together a demo to shop around their work. Now, this was before the days of crowdfunding, and so they released it independently, calling the disc Kissers and Killers. This was the band's first full-blown rock CD. Very grungy. Right from the opening track, the love song Gripped, the choir makes it clear that this band is not going to go quietly off into the night. Chandler was back on bass, making this a return to the old guard, and yet feeling entirely new. The songs are mostly musings on relationships this time around, the tensions of marriage, temptations, and so on. One of my favorite tracks on the disc is I Love Your Mind. Its chorus speaks of a desire for one's beloved in both intellectual and physical terms, and they're just wonderfully intermingled. This is a rare disc now, and while most of the tracks got remixed for their next CD, there was one track left to spend a few years in obscurity. It featured Steve on lead vocals and had the last recorded work of Mark Hurd. This is a technicality, as he did have some demos of his own that were eventually released after his death. Hurd played the accordion on the track.
Tell me how the sky is falling into what was once the sea. How the ground is cracking up to swallow you, to swallow me. That the devils of a lost world raised their planet from the dead. Angel, cover me with kisses and I won't hide my head. No, I won't hide my head. No, 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 I won't mind. Should the sun refuse to shine? No, 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 I won't crawl. Let the sky fall.
Now, I should say this album is being crowdfunded for a all-new release, remastered this year. As noted, Kissers and Killers was really a demo, and the band got a record deal with it. Released through Rex, our record label primarily known for metal bands in the Christian arena, created the album Speckled Bird. Now, this took several of the songs from Kissers and Killers and kind of re-recorded them, rebuilt them, and then added some additional songs. It continued the aggressive nature of Kissers and Killers, including an electrified version of their song The Wilderness, which had been previously heard in an acoustic form on the first Browbeats compilation.
Everybody learns to live
This is a solid collection of songs and a rather unique part of the choir catalog. Somewhat out of place, but really, I like this one, and it has a lot of memorable music on it, strong tracks.
Your heart so true. Count butts and bottles in the morning when you're gone.
Around this time, or shortly thereafter, Dan Michaels joined the staff of a new label called Tattoo Records, and this led to the inevitable. The choir's next album was released through, you guessed it, Tattoo Records. The new album under Tattoo was called Free Flying Soul, and this was a bit of a step back from the more aggressive Speckled Bird, but it wasn't without its rock leanings. It showed the band finding a comfortable place between their sounds. Now, one element that's actually kind of missing from almost the entire disc is Dan Michaels' trademark Lyricon. It appears in one song, but Dan was kind of busy with the day-to-day label stuff, and that may have presented a challenge to be a real huge part of the album's music before they went and toured. Standout tracks include Sled Dog,
You don't have to whip my hide. I'd love to take you for a ride.
Salamander, Away with the Swine,
And I do realize moderation is truly a wise ideal. Away with the swine, demons and insanity. Away the swine, away from decency. Set the madmen free.
and then there's the beautiful Ocean, a metaphor for the church.
Disregard the wreckage under healing tide. All the shame in Jesus' name was covered when he died.
The Christian church, not the band that sang Under the Milky Way. Now, the band toured with another Christian band on Tattoo called Common Children, and that led to Common Children's Mark Bird joining the band for their live performances as a second guitarist in later years. The band won a Dove Award for Best Modern Rock Album for Free Flying Soul, and the tour with Common Children was meant actually as a farewell, and they released a recording of live material from the tour. The band thought it's time to retire and focus on other endeavors in their lives. And other than a couple of cornerstone appearances, they were effectively done. Derry and Steve produced more worship albums, this time under the moniker of City on a Hill. Tim moved back to California and a day job. And Dan started a new record label called Galaxy 21. But as 2000 neared, the band started to realize that maybe they weren't completely done.
She makes noise, she breaks toys, she brings me tears of joy.
In early 2000, they started writing and recording an album that they had planned to release independently. Flap Your Wings was released through the Galaxy 21 label, and it showed none of the signs of a band phoning it in another album. No, this felt like the band found a new, fresh approach to their songs and their songwriting. They blended in their more worship-oriented music, which Derry and Steve had been working on, with songs about love and family. There were songs such as Flowing Over Me.
There is a pool in the desert. things unseen, saving water.
And a quote-unquote cover of the song Beautiful Scandalous Night, which was from their first worship album, the first At the Foot of the Cross CD.
At the wonderful, tragic, mysterious tree, on that beautiful, scandalous night, you and me were atoned by his blood, forever washed white, on that beautiful, scandalous night.
Hindalong's penchant for confessional songs about family were met with A Moment in Time.
Diamonds, it was only a moment in time.
And I Didn't Mean Any Harm.
So blue tonight, I sure will kiss you so nice. Tonight, I sure will hold you tight and care for you.
Now, the most memorable track for me is probably the song Hey Gene. Now, while they were working on the album, their close friend, Gene Eugene, established producer and the frontman of Adam Again, passed away very unexpectedly. Literally died at the at a soundboard, if I'm remembering that correctly. So Hey Gene celebrates the memory of Gene as this bright, quirky, and fun guy, and as somebody who had interacted with him over the years, I would agree he was quite a character, and so I agree with the song when Derry sings "So Sad You Had to Go."
I suppose you found some peculiar creatures to get to know. You always were a curious kind soul. Sad you had to go so soon. Hey Gene, we remember you. Yeah, we laugh when we think of you, Gene. Hey Gene, we remember you. Yeah, we cry when we think of you, Gene. Hey Gene, we remember you. Yeah, we love you anyway. Hey Gene, flap your wings.
The CD, to everyone's surprise, was nominated for a Grammy. After years of being on larger labels and still getting overlooked, it was the small indie release that made the band get noticed by the Grammys. Go figure. At the same time, to celebrate the band's 20th anniversary, they put together a box set called Never Say Never. It was comprised of the first 8 or 9 studio CDs, which 8 or 9 depending on how you count Kissers and Killers or Shades of Grey. It included a bonus disc of rare material, demos, remixes, old songs, and songs from compilations and B-sides, etc. There was also a book full of memories, both from the band and the fans, along with lyrics and photos. Now, it was another 5 years before we heard anything from the band. Derry and Steve had zero involvement in the production side. Instead, they placed themselves in the hands of Common Children's Mark Bird. Mark had grown very close to the guys, and it really pays off with a wonderful set of songs that sound like a natural progression for the band. Bird actually wrote music for several of the songs, and Tim Chandler wrote music for No One Gets a Smooth Ride. Yet, never do these contributions feel out of place or out of sync. All the songs feel like they are part of the same family. The opening title track is a gentle song of lament.
Like the snake who calls the lizard a reptile, like the chimp who calls the jester a clown. When I tell you, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, I've gotta set my knees on the ground. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
The band contemplates romantic love yet again in a terrible mystery.
The treasure in you I never could own. I smile when I see you now. This planet keeps turning around, and I don't cry anymore. Only once in a while, when I am alone. What a terrible mystery.
It looks upon love as a struggle, worth it even when all seems to be lost.
When I see you falling, when I hear you crying, when I feel you fading away, how I wish I knew what to say. When I see you falling, when I hear you crying, when I feel you fading away, how I wish I knew what to pray.
In How I Wish I Knew, Derry's melancholy voice tries to find the way to provide comfort when comfort seems impossible to give. When you see people suffering and yet are at a complete loss as to how to reach out and give them the support they need, it can be very frustrating, and this song captures that beautifully. Mercy Will Prevail looks out from the inside of pain and doubt. Hindalong writes,
I wanna swear it's true, but it's hard to defend it. I know it comes from you, and I don't comprehend it. Love never fails. Mercy will prevail. I wanna swear it's true, but it's hard to defend it.
and anyone who struggles with putting their faith in things, whether it be a parent, a friend, or a god, will likely feel a connection to the song. Oh, How the Mighty Have Fallen looked like it might actually be the final album for the choir. But 5 years later, they delivered all new material. "2010's Burning Like the Midnight Sun" was a blending of the band's various styles. Bringing Mark Bird in as an official member for this album, the dual guitars brought together dreamy rock and a touch of their grungier sounds. The opening track is an ode to love enduring.
I'm not going down behind the mountain. I'm never gonna fade away. I'm burning like the midnight sun. Burning like the midnight sun.
That melancholy ghost is about showing empathy in the heartbreak of others.
Worlds away. Sad child, go on, cry. That melancholy ghost is haunting your heart. Sad child, go on, cry.
Honestly, the song Sorry I Laughed is sort of rare. The title is pretty obvious, but an apology for laughing at the misfortune of others seems kind of uncommon.
What kind of friend would be so cold? Amused as tragedy unfolds.
Now, this album also inspired some controversy. Steve notes he was struggling with certain theological issues, and while he was chatting one time with Mark Bird about it, Mark told Steve, "It's the word inside the word." The song is about trying to reconcile the words of the Bible, the rules, and the contradictions life can bring to that. The song exhorts people to use love as their guide. Love should lead your understanding of God and the Bible. And yet, this led to people feeling that the band was really being extremely soft on homosexuality.
Every child is heaven's own. Drop the stone. The message is not a curse, a weapon of ancient verse. Come out of the dark age, turn the light on, the light on. I've already heard enough to know what I'm certain of. The word inside the word, the word inside the word, the word inside the word is love.
Now, interestingly, I never saw the band even try and walk that interpretation back, that they were being quote-unquote soft or endorsing homosexuality. It seemed that Steve was more than willing, as the songwriter, to say that, yeah, maybe I don't think it's bad or evil. And really, the album kind of backs that up with the even more blatant, "It should have been obvious."
Yeah, that was me, the self-appointed judge of your own orientation. I studied law at the blind man's school of cruel indoctrination. We've gotta look up to see the light. We've gotta look in to know what's right. Hey, we gotta look inside. It should have been obvious. It should have been obvious. It should have been obvious, but it wasn't to them, and it isn't to us. It should have.
Tim Chandler and his son Max, who was 16 at the time, wrote the song "It Should Have Been Obvious." The song looks to the past to ask the question of what should be obvious today that Christians should not do. It was inspired by a Bible teacher who noted that it should have been obvious to early American Christians that it's wrong to own slaves. And yet, Christians found ways to justify it. Religion, Steve notes, can wear a cruel face. Oh, hey! Remember when I said it would be interesting for the choir to re-record some of their older songs? Well, as a bonus to Burning the Midnight Sun, they also released an album called Plumed. It's a collection of acoustic versions of songs covering their output, going all the way back to Voices and Shadows. Plumed truly makes for an intimate listen. For a long time, I've stated that if I ever got the chance to choose music for movies and TV, I would totally ask the choir to record an acoustic version of the song Dreams from Voices and Shadows. And not only have they done it, why, they opened the album with it.
All my dreams are falling. All my dreams are falling. All my dreams are falling now. All my dreams are falling. All my dreams are falling. All my dreams are falling now.
These renditions to some of their classics are almost definitive versions. Love Your Mind stands out.
And I don't see why you're you're saying to me. Slide a little bit closer.
As does Circle Slide's sentimental song.
Tears fall into my hands. Let your tears fall into my hands. Listen closely and I will sing for you a sentimental song, and you will know just how I feel.
Hey Jean takes on a light acoustic pop and still celebrating the band's lost friend.
We miss you down here. Hey Jean, we remember you. Yeah, we laugh when we think of you, Jean. Hey Jean, we remember you. Yeah, we cry when we think of you, Jean. Hey Jean, we remember you. Yeah, we love you anyway.
Burning Like the Midnight Sun was the band's announcement that they were back in full force. So 2012 saw the release of The Loudest Sound Ever Heard.
She's evolving and problem solving. Her spirit revolving like a windworm. She's such a strange girl.
The opener, Strange Girl, is a slightly lighter pop tune, but the lyrics are driven by Hindalong's notion that women should not feel compelled to fit in the expectations of society and of men. That women should feel free to be even strange.
I'm living to love in a dying world. I'm learning to fly. I'm living to love in a dying world. I'm learning to fly. Time will evaporate.
Learning to Fly is about living and loving to the fullest in a world of conflict. While Cross That River uses the themes of the 12 steps, it gives hope for taking life day by day.
We all feel trepidation. Cross that river, one rock at a time. You can cross that river. You can cross that river.
The forest inverts the concept of the phrase, not seeing the forest for the trees.
On you, I believe the sun will shine on you and me, my friend. I have learned to trust the turning of the seasons. Even now, the sun is breaking through the clouds again, but I still don't know the causes or the reasons.
It sees a positive view that you can look forward and embrace life's mysteries. Featuring one of the greatest choir songs ever, 2014 brought us Shadow Weaver. What You Think I Am is seriously one of my favorite choir songs. The song's an exploration of the dichotomy of being human. The song carries the theme of contrast that drives the album.
I'm nobody's angel, I'm not that good. I'm no red devil in the wicked mood. I'm a dedicated minister and a downright sinister man. I'm a whole lot better and a whole lot worse than what you think I am.
White Knuckles is about embracing life and taking risks.
Dancing with the serpents, dancing with a snake, dancing with the serpents, dancing with a snake.
In All We Know, the band looks into how we can persevere in troubled times and still make the world a better place.
She knows how suffering feels. We all know how suffering feels. And you know you're alive when you taste your own blood. Open hands to the sky and with your face in the mud. We all know.
Meanwhile, the spiritual cousin to the word inside the word is Everybody's Got a Guru.
There's a lot to learn and to discern, never minding the golden rule. I'm hoping to get more limber, and the teacher is beautiful. Everybody's got a guru. Everybody's got a guru. Everybody's got a guru.
This song is really about the courage needed to sometimes admit that you simply don't know the answer. "2018 has brought another record from the choir. Their latest outing is Bloodshot, and it treads familiar ground, such as the fallibility of even the most well-meaning in Only Reasons.
There is no such thing as a perfect lover. A truly merciful friend is rare to find. We all cheat at least a little undercover. There is no blacker shadow side than mine.
Magic is about simply embracing mystery with the one you love.
You believe in magic, and I believe in you. You believe in magic. You believe in magic. So I believe in magic too. You believe in
The Way You Are is a tale of painful conflict between friends and the attempts to find peace in the relationship.
the way you always are. Don't be that way. The way you always be. Quit being like you. The way you always are. Don't be that way. And I won't be the way I always am too.
And House of Blues is just a hard look at coping with the aftermath of a divorce.
We're not gonna live in a house of blues. Live in a house of blues. We love each other way too much to stay here. Not gonna live in a house of blues. Live in a house of blues. You know I love you way too much to die here with you, dear.
Birds Bewildered is a song of the ambiguous nature of love, which hopes much but always carries an unknown risk of failures in the future.
My mind is kind of fuzzy and it doesn't much matter who. Maybe I said it to you. We set each other free.
From day one, the choir wrote lyrics that dared to ask questions, hope and dream, and shed honest tears. They created music that could propel dreams and faith. And for that, I declare that Derry Dougherty, Steve Hindalong, Dan Michaels, Tim Chandler, and their various other players with the choir make Christian music that doesn't suck.
I'm nobody's angel, I'm not that good. I'm the red devil in the wicked wood. I'm a dedicated minister and a downright sinister man. I'm nobody's angel.